I've actually decided I'm going to set up another recruitment business. But I'm not trying to compete with you, and I can't compete with you. You're a big, that's daft. But they didn't react well.
Right.
In fact, I was not going to make it. I wasn't going to be a success.
Right.
It was that sort of stereotypical exit interview where there was no listening, but it was just, I look forward to seeing you fail. And I remember phoning his PA, totally unprepared for what I was going to say. So the phone's ringing and I'm thinking, I've not thought this through at all. What am I saying here? And he said, so why haven't you done it yet? As if I've been wasting my time the last, 5 years. I thought we'll start with 10. So I only had to buy 5 pairs of shoes. If you know about mail shots, it's a bit like a mail shot. There's only like a 1% success rate. So I was kind of thinking, well, maybe I'd get a reply. I got 8 responses out of the 10. I followed them all up with a call and I said, can I get hold of so-and-so, and you always get the gatekeeper and just tell them it's the person that sent them the shoe. It worked.
If you have been enjoying listening to the stories of entrepreneurs across Edinburgh, then why not subscribe? If you're on YouTube, you can hit the red button down below and hit the bell to get notifications. Or if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, then subscribe to the podcast. We hope you enjoy the show.
Kirsty, thanks for coming on.
Nice to be here.
Tell us a little bit about your business.
So I founded a recruitment business, iMultiply, in 2012, and we help other businesses to attract and retain top finance professionals. Amazing. It's as simple as that, really, from trainee to board level.
Great. And what size of team? Where are you based?
So we have an office in Edinburgh, an office in Glasgow, a team of 15 at the minute. And we are currently expanding into the north region of England. Okay,
great. So take us back to the beginning, maybe you can go as far back as you like, but, how did iMultiply come about? What was kind of your journey into business?
Do you know what? I come from a business family. I've always loved business. I always loved talking about business. That was what we talked about around the dinner table growing up. And it was the only thing I felt kind of good at school in terms of all the business subjects, accounting, economics, business studies. So went on to do that at uni. And then I didn't know what I was going to do. I wanted to set up a business, didn't know what the business would be. And I was just flicking through top companies to work for. And it was literally like, oh, recruitment, what's that? Oh, you get to meet other businesses. Oh, I get to meet other businesses and see offices and hear about other people's challenges. Okay, I'll give that a shot. So went into recruitment, worked for a big multinational recruitment business, enjoyed the job, but quickly realised that the industry has a very mixed reputation. And I could see why. Actually, we were being, it was all about quantitative KPIs. That's what we were being measured on. And it wasn't really about the customer or qualitative measures. And I thought, that is why people don't like recruiters on the whole. Yeah. We'd be getting called things like you're a necessary evil. And I thought that's a shame actually, because I believe in the value of what we're doing, but also I could see why. And I could see that sometimes it wasn't right for the customer. So I thought there must be a different way. Actually, whilst I think about what business I'm setting up next, why don't I set up a recruitment business was my thinking at the time. And that's what I did. But I set it up with a view of having a different structure and a different way of measuring the team so that we didn't fall into the same trap as the big multinationals.
And how long were you in the multinational then before you then made the leap to your own?
You know what? I did 2 years, won a few of their awards, and at the time it was money in travel vouchers. Yeah. So I was early 20s, went off travelling for a couple of years with that, which was nice. Came back and thought, I don't actually have a network and I don't know what I'm doing. I went back to the same business because I enjoyed the job. And I'm not knocking, by the way, the sort of big multinational. It's just a certain way of working. Didn't quite sit 100% well with me. And so went back for 2 years. But I said to them, I'm coming back for 2 years, then I'm setting up on my own. So I was actually focused and quite clear. And that's what I did.
How did they react to that then? Because that's, very honest.
I said I'm setting up on my own business, but I didn't say what, because I didn't know at that time it was definitely going to be recruitment. Yeah. So just coming up for 2 years, I said, you know what? I've actually decided I'm going to set up another recruitment business, but I'm not trying to compete with you, and I can't compete with you. You're a big, that's daft. And actually, I'm not going to phone anyone that I've worked with here because I don't need to. I'm happy to start from scratch.
Yeah.
But they didn't react well.
Right.
In fact, I was not going to make it. I wasn't going to be a success.
Right.
It was that sort of stereotypical exit interview where there was no listening in terms of what I had to say, but it was just, I look forward to seeing you fail.
Never.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. And I thought, great. That has just spurred me on even more. And actually, just before then, so when I decided, right, I'll set up a recruitment business that measures the people differently. We're going to have values at the centre of the business in terms of aligned with behaviours, and people's reviews are going to be aligned with their values, and we're going to bring the values into the recruitment process. Now, this is 11 years ago, so that's become more and more common now, but I think then it was a bit less common. And I thought, right, I need to find someone that's done this before so that they can help steer me, because I knew I didn't want it just to be myself. A lot of people go out on their own. I wanted to grow a team, and I didn't have that experience. There was obviously a little bit of a confidence thing, in terms of I want someone to help guide me. And also there was a credibility piece. I thought, how am I going to persuade people to come and join me when I've got 4 years recruitment experience and I'm saying I'm going to grow this business? So I had read about this chap in Edinburgh who had set up a few businesses before, serial entrepreneur. He'd exited a couple as well in recruitment. He owned one of Scotland's largest independent recruitment businesses, and he'd set up a private equity business as well. I thought, he's my man. I need him, and I need his money, and I need his expertise to help me. And I'd only come across him actually because my dad had sort of, again, because we talked business at the table, my dad had talked about this private equity company. And every time someone mentions a new business I've not heard of, I do go away and sort of look it up. And so that's how I'd sort of read about him. And I remember phoning his PA, totally unprepared for what I was going to say. So the phone's ringing and I'm thinking, I've not thought this through at all. What am I saying here? Yeah. So I just said, Paul needs to meet me. He needs to meet me because I want to do what he's done. And just sort of came out. And I got a meeting.
Paul needs to meet me.
Yeah. Like he needs me. I don't need him. And I got a very polite, let me come back to you, And Paul and I got his money. I'll tell you how in a second. But we've become very good friends. And actually now looking back, I realise he's just a generous man, generous with his time as well. So I think I just struck lucky. But he did meet me, and I went to that meeting. And again, wasn't totally prepared, but I thought a little bit more about what I was going to say. But I had no idea what he would need. I didn't know how much money I was asking him for. So I was honest. I just said all of this to him. But he said something very profound to me, which I'll always remember. So at the time, all my friends and family are saying things like, you go for it, all encouraging, like, this is great, you're 27, you're really young, set up a business. And I was thinking, kudos me, ego's like at play. And I say to Paul, I want to do this. And he said, so why haven't you done it yet? As if I've been wasting my time the last, 5 years. And just the way he said it, it was polite, but it was just like, he wasn't that impressed. Like, well, if you're going to do it, why have you not done it? And I was so thankful he said that, because that then, rather than me taking, who knows how long, it might have taken me 6 months, 12 months to just hand him a notice and get it done. I did all of that within a month of meeting him. And I said to him, right, what do I need to give you to get some money and get your support? And actually, I'd like you to be my chair. And he said, well, I would need to see X, Y, Z. I said, right, I'll be back next week with X, Y, Z. And that's what we did. And he was...
And just out of interest, when he asked you that question in the moment, what was your response when he said, why haven't you done it yet? What did you say?
I was shocked. So I think I was taken aback. And I was like, good question, but I'm doing it now. I'm doing it right now.
Decision was made.
I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Because I thought, well, I've been travelling and I've only been back 2 years and I'm only 27. Yeah. But actually, it was a good question, because why was I just thinking? I think I'd said I've been thinking about it for a number of, for a while. And I think his point was, well, why have you just been thinking about it? Which was a very good point. And I guess it's like a lot of people talk about it, but they don't necessarily do it. So anyway, I was very fortunate to meet Paul, and he has been fabulous. He was my chair for the first 4 years. I bought him out a few years ago as an angel investor, and he's now a dear friend. So that was a great match.
It was interesting that you felt like you needed a chair. That it was just like, I just need someone to come in. And even to give them a title like chair when it's like you and him at that point, it's like...
And actually lots of businesses have spoken to me about that. A lot of founders with other small businesses that don't have a board at all. And actually I've always built on my board since then, since day one. And for me, it's stood me in really good stead, just having that support network, having people have my back, having the accountability as well. I can hold myself accountable to quite a high degree, but when you've actually said something out loud and you've said it to someone else, and you know that they're going to meet you next month and ask how it's gone, you're doing it because you don't want to look like a fool. Yeah. So I've always found that really useful, and the sounding board, just great. So I've always done that. I've had different advisors throughout the year, over the years, and even actually my current chair, again, he was someone I'd read about in Business Insider, award winner, high profile, and I thought years ago, not when I was looking for a chair, I need to know him because I want to learn from him. And again, he was generous with his time. He met me. What I took away from that meeting was how succinct his vision was for the firm that he was running at the minute, quite a sizable legal firm. And I learned a lot. And then actually when it came to me needing a chair more recently, I bumped into him and he was standing down as managing partner, and I thought, he's my man. But again, we only knew each other because I'd just phoned him randomly.
Yeah. What do you think then the distinction between having a board versus a paid coach and freebie mentors, because it's quite a big, I assume it's quite a big spend, either in ownership or, literally finance. So why would you go down that route rather than a coach, free mentor route?
Well, what I would say is, actually, in the early days, it wasn't a spend. I persuaded people to work with me for free, out of the goodness of their heart, because I got them excited about the business and what I was wanting to do. So actually, I would say to people that are maybe put off with the spend is actually don't put that as a barrier initially, because there's some people that are actually keen to help. But when the business could afford it, it is right, and morally, I think, right to pay people for their time if you can afford it. But actually, that was worth it. I have used a coach as well. I think a coach is different, plays a different role, very, very useful role. But that my coach has helped me self-reflect and created real time and space and asked very good questions, which the board do as well, but without any judgment or sharing their opinion. And I think there's a really good place for that. But I think there's also a very good place for when you actually want to learn from someone's experience. But that's not a coach, that's a mentor. Free mentors, also fine. The reason I created a board structure, though, over paid or free mentors, is that I wanted the people to, by being company directors, to feel accountable themselves. And that actually also helped to drive business, because they pass business, refer business in. And also it helped with iMultiply's credibility. So when we were up against the more established businesses, when I said, well, this is a team structure and this is who we've got involved and this is who's supporting me, much more credible than I use a mentor just to help with my leadership skills over there, I felt that way anyway. Yeah.
And going back, you said that obviously the way that you were measuring the team from quantitative to qualitative, and also the use of the values, which, as you rightly say, is like now it's kind of much more commonplace, but at the time. So where did you learn that then, and how did you arrive upon that being the kind of the thing that would be different?
I think one thing that I like to do is I like to understand how other industries work and then see if you can take an idea from another industry and then put it into, the industry I'm in. So I was looking at customer feedback and how they do it in car sales, because I was saying car sales is also, it's got a mixed reputation. I can understand why. There's the kind of, do you trust someone, do you not, and also they can be quite, really can be pushy in terms of like, can I get a 10 out of 10 on my customer feedback? But I was like, there's something in it, but not quite that. So, but that's what got me thinking. I wrote a list of the reasons people don't like recruitment companies, by the way, and then tried to tackle each one. Mm-hmm. And there's a lack of trust because people felt they couldn't trust a consultant because they're just after a short-term win because they're looking for their commission at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So I thought, right, how do we tie their commission into how happy our customers are? Mm-hmm. And that's what we did. Mm-hmm. So make the commission not just based on what they've brought in sales-wise. Let's make it based on how happy the customer is, the customer being the employer and the candidate, because this is the other slight challenge in our industry, is the industry as a whole, they use the term client just to refer to the employer, as if the employer, because they're paying, is more important. Mm-hmm. But actually, you need both. And my view is they're both equally important. And if they can both be called clients, or let's call one employer and one candidate, or both customers. Because as soon as you call one client and one not, one of my pet hates is when you see a recruiter put an advert, my client is recruiting for I just think it makes the candidate feel like they're second fiddle. Yeah. So there's a lot of subtle changes like that. There's I think a cultural shift. And so what I'm saying to the team is, you need to work with the business, work with the candidates. They all get questioned at the end of the process, including the candidates that were interviewed that didn't get the job, asked for constructive feedback, and they're asked a Net Promoter Score question. And really, it's a Net Promoter Score answer that feeds back into the consultant's commission. Mm-hmm. So what we're saying is, we want to deliver what's going to make you happy rather than what our internal KPI is. Because as an industry, it gets targeted on things that are, in my view, quite crazy, like how much time you spent on the phone, how many calls you've made, how many meetings you've been on. But what's the quality? And how are we measuring the quality? Yeah. And the same with values. So we've got lots of things around the values. Every single person knows what our values are. You ask people in companies, what are the company values? And you'd be lucky if they could tell you. Yeah. They know what the values are, they know the definitions, they've been co-created, they get reviewed annually. There's a peer-voted Values Champion Award, there's an annual Values Champion Award. When people interview with us, they're asked to bring in 3 items or images that represent our 3 values and talk us through how they would define them. And so it's very, in our we call iAchieves, which is our version of appraisal in a way, they have to write down where they've, how they've aligned to the behaviours of the values. And even when actually people vote each other for the values champion, they have to say why, aligned with the behaviours. So I think there's no getting away from how I'm telling people I want them to behave. Mm-hmm. Don't get me wrong, we're not always perfect, and there are the odd occasion where it's if someone might fall out with that, but then it's very easy, and it was easy when I was managing the company, to pick them up on that, or give someone a warning, or because it's all documented. Mm-hmm. None of this, we just do the right thing. What does that actually mean? Yeah. Because what's the right thing to me might be different to what's the right thing to you. So I don't like that definition of a value. Yeah. Doing the right thing. You've got to be more specific. Yeah.
Very good indeed.
It seems like there's so much depth that you've got in the business. It's really interesting to see how much time's been invested in kind of the structure and the build of, and the. How much of this was thought before you started, or how much has been developed as you've gone?
Oh, most of it's developed along the way. Yeah. Most of it's developed along the way. And most of these ideas just come when I'm running. So I just run and then I go, I just always think, how can we improve? How can we be better? What can we learn? And I push the team for this all the time. Every time they come back from meeting a company, what have you learned? But what would they like to see from us that we're not doing? Our customer feedback's great, this is internal chat at the minute. I get that. Mm-hmm. That's great. But I want to know what we can do differently, what would make us even better. So I guess I think it's a mindset shift, but it's definitely evolved. I think as I get older, become more of a thinker as well, because early on I just get an idea and just do it, and then it either works or it doesn't, and then you just move on. I'm probably. I think a little bit more maybe now, but probably not that much. But But I think that's the theme of the journey, is that an idea or an opportunity has arisen and I've gone, oh, well, let's just try that. Like opening Glasgow office was an opportunity. I'd thought about it. I thought it'd be nice to have an office in Glasgow, because Edinburgh and Glasgow, they're only an hour apart, but they are very different markets. And then I met someone and they said, we're looking for a job in Glasgow. But I want to manage an office. I want to manage a team. You don't have that. And they just relocated up from down south, and they said, I can't take the job with you, because I thought this could be it. Let's take this opportunity. And she said, I can't take the job with you because actually I've been offered another role and they've got a team and they've got an office in Glasgow and I need a job starting Monday. And we're on like Wednesday. So I'm actually going to go with the other one, unfortunately, because I prefer your culture and what you're saying. So I just said, okay, well, what about come and work in the Edinburgh office for a week as an induction, and then by a week on Monday, I'll have you an office in Glasgow and someone to manage. And she said, really? That in a week? Yep. Because I thought, I can do it. I can just spend my whole, like how hard can it be to get an office? We can always move. And I can find someone that can even just be a resourcer initially to work with her. And I just knew that if I focused a week on it, I could do it. I made myself do it. So anyway, that's actually how the Glasgow office started 7 odd years ago. And it's flourished ever since. But I didn't overthink it. And maybe if I had, I would have not taken that opportunity. Because there are things I have also done, like opened an office in Belfast and it didn't work.
Right.
So you win some, you lose some.
Probably thought about it too much.
Maybe I did, yeah.
So just so that.
And see, going back to your exit interview that before you started, how much did that fuel you to really kind of almost prove to others? I mean, is that a driving force for you, or?
I mean, it did.
Or what drives you?
It did in that moment. It fueled me in that moment because I was just like, oh, you wait and see. Yeah. But it was already happening. Uh-huh. By that point, I'd already met Paul, already had the investment, already had, the name, it was already happening. But it was kind of a nice kind of, you see. What drives me, I think it is just the challenge of it. And I think that's what I've enjoyed, is just which is why I've always developed my role within the company. You set something up and you're doing everything, and then we hire someone to take off, finance and admin, and then it just, grew. And then in 2019, I hired an MD so that I could leave the company from an operational perspective in its entirety and actually just rock up at board meetings and rock up at team events. But that whole thing was a journey in itself. You can't just hire someone and then go by. It was years of, right, is the business the right size that I could give away this bit of my role? Could it sustain me giving away this? Oh no, now I need to take that back because I didn't have the right person that could take that off me. It was years of, and I had a really good chair at that point whose remit was help me with my succession plan. And that was really, and he'd help me, interview someone with the view of them becoming, MD. So again, I think part of that is just about me wanting to push myself to what am I going to do next? And that's why I've got a hankering to actually set something else up that's out with the industry that I know, just to have a go and do it. I'm doing the whole kid thing in between.
How much has that changed things for you, having kids?
I mean, that's quite a change. That's quite a change. And also COVID changed things as well. 2 months before COVID hit the UK, I'd appointed an MD. We're in the pub with a big bottle of champagne, really profitable business. Egos were high, everything was great. And then COVID hit, and it was a shocker. It was absolutely shocking. I mean, it was so challenging for so many reasons. And so that, I guess, that changed things, because it changed how much sort of what I call fun money we had in the business. And then I had children during COVID as well, so I couldn't jump back in to help like I maybe would have either. But actually now, on reflection, maybe that was a good thing, because actually having the kids has stopped me from jumping back in, because they actually don't need me. I've got a very good team, very fortunate. And actually, if I hadn't had the children, I think I would have been inclined, because of my need for control, to jump back in. And actually, it wouldn't have helped. I don't think it would have helped anything. It would have just undermined people, and they're actually doing a really good job.
And what actually happened in COVID? Because obviously there are some industries that actually did thrive through COVID, and some kind of, like hospitality is a good example, just absolutely kind of stopped. What happened with yours?
I mean, hats off to any recruitment business that did well, and there are a few.
Yeah.
We weren't one of them. We didn't do well, and I've reflected and I've thought, there's a few calls we could have done differently, but I guess you don't know, do you? So I don't spend too much time thinking about it. But COVID hits, and we essentially get paid when we've introduced someone to a role and they're about to start. So we had a couple of £100,000 worth of revenue due to come in, because we had a few starts over the next few months. 7 companies called to say that person that's due to start, that's handed their notice in their current employer, we don't want them anymore. 7. Which doesn't sound like a huge number, but that is hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of revenue, right? But actually, more importantly than that, that is someone's life that they have handed their notice in their current employer, and their new job now is saying they can't take them on. They were very difficult phone calls to make. And actually,
So that was down to you to make the call as opposed to
Well, we pushed back. We were always going to call as well, but we did push back and say, I think out of courtesy, you've taken them through a recruitment process, they've got to know you, you should call. And 6 of the companies did make a call as well, but 1 said, no, you deal with it. Actually, 1 person had actually relocated for the job. That was shocking. That was shocking.
And of course, that person wouldn't have had the benefit of a furlough or anything like that.
Totally, they were just left. All of them were left stuck. I think 2 of them managed to keep the job they managed to go back. That's quite hard, because it's like you've handed your notice in, and then it's like, whoopsie. And I appreciate the businesses that were due to take them on. I appreciate their position. It was not a good position for anybody. But that was hard. So anyway, and then you go recruitment fees. So there, all our our pipeline's gone, and then all our customers are going, we're just holding off. And then internal was interesting. I've got my view, rightly or wrongly, was we're all getting through it together. I don't care if you're the top biller or not. I believe you're all talented, so we're all getting through it. But to some of the sort of more lone wolves that we had at the time, and high performers, they didn't like that. They thought, no, we should be prioritised because we can get the business through this, and you should either make the others redundant or get rid of the newbies, which is a school of thought, and I get that. I get that. But I didn't agree. So we're all going to do it together. But that upset a couple of high performers who decided that just didn't sit with them. So that's okay. I'm okay with that decision, because actually coming out of it, and it's taken a while to come back and build up, we've now got, I think, a team that's the strongest it's ever been, especially in terms of team cohesion. There's no lone wolves now, and actually they perform better as a unit. But I didn't feel like that at the time. At the time, I was just stressed, baby and wine. Those 2 things you probably shouldn't say in a sentence together. But it was very, very stressful. We used furlough. Yeah, it was just, all of us, uncertainty.
And just out of interest, you used the term lone wolves. Was it only in retrospect that you noticed that they were lone wolves, or actually were they lone wolves before COVID, but you just tolerated it? Or
Yes. I think the challenge is when you've got a high performer that's bringing in a lot of sales, your tolerance level might move a little bit. But one of my biggest lessons, in fact, one of my most challenging times in business wasn't COVID. It was actually parting ways with a high performer. Because our time working together just came to an end, because ultimately our values didn't align, and what we wanted to do with the business didn't align, and what behaviours we'd both accept didn't align. And actually, COVID was extremely stressful, and the whole business was at stake, but everyone else was going through it, which was kind of nice. Whereas before COVID, I'd had this top performer that I'd been, having conversations with for quite some time about, I need you to act a bit differently, and I need you not to say those things, and I need you, and it was just getting really stressful because actually I knew I probably had to part ways with them. But I liked them as a person. It wasn't personal.
Yeah.
And I also owed them a lot because they helped me build the business. But that decision was very stressful. And, and it's easy to read books and you go, your culture is only as good as your, what's the expression, the behaviours you put up with is kind of the level. But when it actually comes to doing it yourself and actually parting ways with someone that is not quite right, but they perform from a sales perspective, anyway, that was more stressful than COVID. I could probably, with time, write more about that and think about that. And I've often thought, did I do the right thing? Did I not? But as soon as I ever think that, I think, no, I absolutely did. I don't.
And what was the impact on the rest of the team?
Well, the thing is, it lifted everyone. You don't know that at the time. You hope that's going to happen, but it did. Because actually this person was also keeping the people underneath them like as a ceiling, and also kind of dragging me back in as well. So actually it's allowed us to evolve. So it was absolutely the right thing. It was just tough. And I agonised over that decision for way too long.
Do you know, it's interesting just hearing you say that, because I would say that I've come across that time and time again. It's always the same outcome, which after you look back and say, should have done it a lot sooner, and the effect on the team's just, everyone's lifted. Yeah. Do you know? So it's just interesting to hear, although not surprising to hear what you said.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier about a shoe, and I think we've kind of got, I assume it was back in the early days, but there's a story there somewhere.
Go on, this sounds interesting.
Well, back to what I was saying about, you read something, you get an idea, and you think, I wonder if I could do that. So I'd read something about someone using the expression, like, I'll get a foot in the door. And
Oh dear.
I know. So bear with me. I thought it would be a good idea to send some really experienced, high-profile finance directors a shoe, okay? So that I could then phone them and say, now I've got a foot in the door, will you, take my call? And I thought, this is either a genius idea or a disaster, I don't know. But anyway, what was quite funny was, I was on a budget because it was early on, so I needed unbranded shoe boxes. I needed, a lot of thought went into this, the lime green tissue paper. How was I going to get the shoes that weren't 70 quid a pair? So I went to Asda and got George men's shoes, because they were all men, the FDs at the time. But then I was like, but this looks cheap, too cheap, because I can't send a George shoe to such an experienced editor. So I got acetone and scrubbed the George logo off the back of the shoe so that you couldn't see where it was from. So then they don't know it was a £15 pair of shoes. Obviously, I wasn't sending them a pair anyway. I was only sending them one, because there's 1 foot in the door. It's not feet in the door, isn't it?
That would be ridiculous.
2 feet in it, though.
So I thought we'll start with 10. So I only had to buy 5 pairs of shoes. And, if you know about mail shots, it's a bit like a mail shot, there's only like a 1% success rate. So I was kind of thinking, well, maybe I'd get a reply. Anyway, I got 8 responses. Brilliant. Out of the 10. I followed them all up with a call and I said, can I get hold of so-and-so, and you always get the gatekeeper and just tell them it's the person that sent them the shoe. It worked.
Yeah.
It worked 4 out of the 4 calls it worked. Got meetings with them, and 2 of them still today, 7 years on, are very good customers. Get a lot of business from them. Yeah. They've moved us, so great. And one, this is the bit that I thought maybe this wasn't a good idea, it was irony. One business repackaged the shoe and sent it back with a complaint. Oh. And they said that they were shocked. It wasn't environmentally friendly, and it was a waste of a shoe. And also sending it, and they talked about how much it costs to the environment to send a shoe. But they sent it back. They'd repackaged it, all the sellotape they'd used, and they'd posted it back. I took everything in my body not to email them and say, do you know that this is a bit contradictory, but thanks for your note. But anyway, I didn't. And that business will remain nameless.
Yeah, brilliant.
So yeah, that was my story about the shoes. I think I should do it again.
I was like, I remember sponsoring a duck race way back, and but you had to supply your own ducks. And it was sort of the same. I was like, it was right back early, no money. And it was like the same thing. I was like, I don't want to buy crappy ducks. I don't want the duck race to have like the duck. So I bought like these proper racing ducks. And it was like $1,000 for all these ducks. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I've got all these ducks. Anyway, I won't tell the whole story, but it was just one of those ridiculous things. You're like, you end up down this rabbit hole of an idea. And now you spent all this money. Now, we ended up sponsoring that duck race for like 8 years. So we got our money out of those ducks and ended up getting the ducks for free. But again, I won't go into it. But it was just like one of those hilarious things where you're just like, what am I doing? Like you look back and you're like, why did I think that was like a good idea? But it worked. And for us, it was kind of the same. It was like, it kind of worked. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, what a great response rate. It's an 80% response rate.
I know. I'm now thinking, why have we not done that since? But we've done other crazy things since.
I can't help but do to you now what you wanted to not do with your team around KPIs, which is okay. So 10 went out, you got a response rate of 8, 4 actually became clients, 2 of whom are still. So sorry for the quantitative measures there.
It's okay to have quantitative measures, by the way. It's not to say we don't have any key performance indicators. We do. We are a business, but yes, it's not the be all and end all. It's not. But yes, we've done other things since, but nothing quite as maybe unique as that.
Yeah, Kirsty, it's been so great hearing this. We always ask all our guests, the last question is, what is your guiding principle in business?
Listen, because you'll learn nothing from talking and you'll only learn from listening. And that's how you develop and move forward personally and professionally.
Amazing. Fantastic.
And sorry, I can't help but kind of follow up on that as well. So how much of that, because I guess in recruitment, you could, a bit like, car sales, could get, it's a lot of the chats, more talking than listening. So how do you get that point across to the team and, yeah?
So you're right. I think salespeople are...
Yeah, sales in general.
And I've had to improve my listening skills, and I've done a coaching qualification, which has helped with that, and I've put the team through introduction to coaching as well. And it's a training thing. Everyone has the ability to listen, but you need to really work at it. People think they're listening when they're not. They're actually thinking about what they're going to ask next, or they're thinking about, they're distracted. Real active listening is actually sitting with someone and also not speaking as soon as they've stopped speaking, because you don't know what you're going to say next, because you're actually processing what they've said. But that is a lot of work, and that is definitely ongoing. I am not going to sit here and say my team are all fantastic listeners. They're all fantastically talented, but we can all still improve on the listening.
Just on the, if you reorder listen in the word, it gets to silent. Same word, which I remember seeing that. I thought I really like that.
Yes.
About just, as you say, just that you don't have to respond straight away.
Yeah.
Pause for silence. Kirsty, thank you so much for coming on. It's been great to hear your story, and we wish you every luck in the future.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Kirsty.